The most dangerous person in your life is not the one who yells, it's the one who never shows anger. And there's a good chance that this person is you. What if I told you that the calmest person in the room might be exactly the one who carries the biggest storm inside? We grow up hearing that anger is ugly, that polite people don't lose control, that those who get angry are weak or immature. And then, little by little, without realizing it, we learn a dangerous skill: swallowing. Smile when it hurts. Saying no problem when there is, yes. And call it maturity. But here's the truth that no one told you: pent-up anger doesn't go away just because you decided to ignore it. It transforms. It becomes anxiety that appears out of nowhere, tiredness that sleep can't solve, relationships that go cold for no apparent reason, a constant feeling that something is wrong but you don't really know what. Emotional suppression comes at a high cost, and the bill arrives. It always arrives. In this video, you'll understand how silent anger works, why it settles so deep in the unconscious, and most importantly what to do to stop being ruled by it without even knowing it. We're not talking about becoming an explosive person or picking a fight over anything. We're talking about something much more powerful: learning to truly listen to yourself, setting personal boundaries clearly, and reclaiming an authenticity that you may have left behind a long time ago. Stay with me until the end. What comes next can change the way you see yourself. The explosive anger is easy to identify. There's screaming, there's a door slamming, there's a scene. But repressed anger is something else: silent, invisible, dangerous. It's the one that keeps circling inside while you smile and say okay. She doesn't disappear, she just learns to hide very well. The unconscious does not forget what the conscious mind refuses to process. The anger that is not expressed changes address. It will live in the body, in the difficulty of saying no, in the tiredness without explanation. If there is no scream, it does not mean that it is solved, it means that it is stored somewhere deeper. Recognizing this pattern requires self-awareness, and no one teaches this in school. Repressed anger feels like an absence of emotion, but it's too much emotion being held tightly. Understanding this difference is the first step to stop being controlled by something you didn't even know you felt. And the next step is to understand why we learn to do this. No one is born with fear of feeling anger. This is learned. From an early age, many people hear that anger is ugliness, that good children don't get angry, that showing irritation is impolite. This childhood conditioning shapes the way we deal with emotions, and emotional suppression becomes an automatic reflex, almost like breathing. The fear of rejection also plays a huge role in this. When a child learns that expressing anger generates punishment, coldness, or abandonment, the brain does a simple calculation: better to be silent than to risk losing the love of those in need. This defense mechanism makes perfect sense in childhood. The problem is that most people reach adulthood still operating with this old system. And therein lies the trap. What worked to survive back there becomes an obstacle here in front. The emotional suppression that once protected you now prevents you from establishing personal boundaries, from taking a stand, from being who you really are. But before changing the pattern, it is necessary to understand how it disguises itself on a daily basis. Repressed anger is a talented actress. She rarely appears under her own name. Instead, they fantasize about anxiety for no apparent reason, sadness that doesn't go away, constant guilt for things that aren't even their responsibility. You think you're anxious, when in fact you're angry. He thinks he's sad, when in fact he's been frustrated for a long time. Passive-aggressive behavior is another classic disguise. It's that okay said in a tone that is clearly not good. It is the punishing silence, the veiled irony, the help offered with resentment. Emotional suppression doesn't eliminate anger, it just pushes it toward forms of expression that seem safer but slowly erode relationships. The unconscious always finds a way out, even when the conscious mind tries to close all doors. Recognizing these disguises is an exercise in self-awareness that may feel uncomfortable at first. After all, it's easier to say I'm anxious than to admit I'm angry. But identifying the real emotion is what paves the way for dealing with it in truth. And there's a fascinating theory that explains exactly why this happens. In the 1930s, a group of Yale psychologists proposed a simple and powerful idea: every time a goal is blocked, anger is automatically generated. It doesn't matter if the lock is big or small, the mechanism is the same. This frustration-aggression hypothesis explains why we get angry in traffic, in line at the bank, or when someone interrupts a plan that seemed right. The problem is that when anger does not find a healthy outlet, it begins to circulate internally. It's like holding a ball underwater. You spend enormous energy to keep it submerged, and it always finds a way to escape. Emotional suppression in this context does not solve frustration, it only postpones the moment when it will appear, usually in the most inconvenient way possible. And the most curious thing is that many times we don't even know that we are frustrated. Unmet needs accumulate in the unconscious, and anger grows silently without us being able to name the cause. Identifying what is being blocked, a desire, a limit, an expectation, is the first step to interrupt this cycle. But there is an even deeper layer to this story, which Carl Jung described with astonishing accuracy. Carl Jung had an idea that bothered a lot of people and still does. He said that everything that we reject in ourselves does not disappear, but will form an unconscious part of the personality that he called the shadow. The pent-up anger, the envy you deny feeling, the selfishness you find unacceptable, all of these go there. And the shadow, ignored, begins to act on its own. The problem is that we don't see the shadow itself directly, it appears projected on others. Do you know that disproportionate irritation you feel for someone who is too aggressive or imposes himself too much? It could be your own pent-up anger being acknowledged from the outside. Projection is the mechanism by which the unconscious returns what you refuse to integrate, and it does so with interest. Working with the shadow is not a comfortable process, but it is liberating. Jung said that making the unconscious conscious is the true path to authenticity. While anger is hidden in this denied part of you, it controls without asking permission. Recognizing it is the beginning of an emotional integration that transforms not only how you feel, but how you act in the world. And this cycle of suppression has a well-defined structure that is worth understanding. There is a cycle that repeats itself with an almost mechanical regularity in those who carry repressed anger. It starts with an irritation, something small, often a comment, an unfair situation, an ignored need. Instead of acknowledging what they are feeling, the person suppresses. Swallow it. And he goes on as if nothing had happened. But the cycle does not stop there. Right after the repression comes self-criticism. Why did I get mad about this? What an exaggeration on my part, I need to be more calm. And then the guilt appears, not for the situation that generated the anger, but for having felt the anger itself. The cycle of emotional suppression goes from irritation to repression, from repression to self-criticism, and from self-criticism to guilt. And then it starts again. What makes this loop so hard to break is that it looks virtuous on the outside. The person thinks he is being mature, balanced, even spiritual. But inside, self-awareness is diminishing, and the shadow is getting fatter. Each turn of the cycle takes the person a little further away from their authenticity and their real unmet needs. And this weight, over time, takes a very concrete toll on the body and mind. The body does not lie, and psychosomatic health is there to prove it. Repressed anger appears in the form of high blood pressure, chronic inflammation, and high cardiovascular risk. What is not processed emotionally, the body processes in its own way. And it charges with interest that no one expected to pay. The immune system also feels the weight of emotional suppression over time. The constant state of alert generated by the cycle of repression compromises the body's defenses. It makes room for anxiety with no apparent cause, depression, persistent insomnia. The unconscious keeps everything in the body, presents the bill at the least convenient time. The ironic thing is that we suppress anger precisely to feel better and avoid conflict. But the effect is the opposite of what we expect. The wear and tear is accumulating inside. Emotional integration is neither freshness nor exaggeration, it is a real biological necessity. And if the impact on the body is already great, what this suppression does to relationships is even more silent and devastating. Repressed anger is not contained within you, allanite leaks out. In relationships, it appears as emotional distance, cold responses, and a coldness that the other feels but cannot name. Personal boundaries that have never been said out loud become invisible walls that keep away those who are nearby. Projection enters the scene here with full force. When anger is not internally acknowledged, it is attributed to the other. He irritates me, she always does it. What was an unmet need of yours becomes a constant criticism of the behavior of those you love. And the relationship cools down without anyone understanding very well why. Passive-aggressive behavior is the most common child of this dynamic. The punishing silence, the veiled irony, the help offered with resentment, all this is anger disguised as something else. Self-awareness is the only real antidote to this pattern. But before changing the relationship with others, it is necessary to change the relationship with one's own anger, and it has much more to say than it seems. Anger has a bad reputation, but it is one of the most honest emotions that exist. Each time it appears, it is pointing to something concrete, a personal boundary that has been crossed, a need that has not been met, a value that has been disrespected. It is not the problem, it is the sign that there is a problem. Think of anger as an internal GPS. When you feel that familiar irritation creeping in, the question isn't how do I suppress this, but rather what is this telling me? Emotional suppression turns off the GPS and you keep driving without knowing where, accumulating frustrations that you can't even name. Developing emotional self-awareness means learning to read these signals before they accumulate in the unconscious. A small frustration ignored today becomes a huge resentment tomorrow. Each episode of anger is an invitation to get to know yourself better, to understand what really matters to you. And interestingly, it is the most empathetic people who most ignore this invitation. Highly empathetic people have a rare gift: they can sense what another feels with almost frightening accuracy. But this same gift hides a trap: the tendency to put the needs of others always ahead of one's own. The repressed anger in this group is especially silent, because silencing oneself seems, mistakenly, to be an act of love. The problem is that empathy without personal boundaries becomes self-abandonment. The empathetic person absorbs the pain of the other, avoids conflicts at any cost, and swallows their own anger so as not to appear selfish. The unconscious, however, registers each time an unmet need has been ignored in the name of harmony. And the bill arrives in the form of exhaustion, resentment, and emptiness. Emotional suppression, in this context, is almost always confused with virtue. Impatient, I don't like conflict, I prefer the good of the other, phrases that sound beautiful but that often hide a deep repressed anger. True empathy includes empathy for oneself. And learning to integrate one's anger is precisely what allows one to be genuine with the other. But how does this integration process work in practice? The first step of emotional integration is also the simplest and the most ignored: recognizing that the anger is there. Do not judge, do not justify, do not suppress. Just observe, I'm angry right now. This phrase, said internally with honesty, already breaks the cycle of emotional suppression before it gains strength. Self-awareness starts right here. The second step is to name the emotion accurately. There is a difference between I'm angry and I'm angry because my boundary was disrespected. The more specific you can be, the more the unconscious hands control back to you. Books like Marshall Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication are powerful tools in this. process they teach you to transform anger into clear and non-aggressive expression. The third step is to express, and that doesn't mean exploding, it means authentically communicating what you felt and what you need. An honest conversation, a clearly established limit, a no said without guilt. Emotional integration is not the end of anger. It is the beginning of a different relationship with it. And when this process takes hold, something surprising happens. Anger becomes one of the greatest paths to freedom. When you stop suppressing anger and start integrating it, something changes in a profound and silent way. Personal boundaries become clearer, choices more aligned, relationships more honest. Authenticity is not a state that is conquered all at once, it is built each time you choose to listen to yourself instead of being silent. Integrated anger brings a clarity that no forced meditation can. It reveals what you really value, what you are not willing to tolerate, who you really are underneath. All the layers of conditioning. The unconscious, finally heard, stops needing to scream through the body. Relationships and passive-aggressive behaviors. Integrating anger is, deep down, an act of respect for oneself. It is telling the unconscious that your emotions have value, that your unmet needs deserve attention, that your story matters. Psychosomatic health improves, relationships gain depth, and the feeling of emotional freedom is no longer a distant concept. Anger, well integrated, does not diminish you, it completes you. You've come this far, and that says a lot about you. How many times in your life have you swallowed anger thinking you were being mature, when in fact you were just postponing an important conversation with yourself? How many unmet needs do you still carry in silence, disguised as anxiety, tiredness, or emotional distance? Repressed anger is not a character defect, it is a learned pattern, and everything that has been learned can be relearned. The path to authenticity necessarily passes through this uncomfortable territory of really listening, of naming what you feel, of establishing personal boundaries without guilt. It's not a quick process, but it's the most honest there is. So I leave you with a question to reflect on today. What emotion have you been ignoring that is waiting to be heard? Start there. And if you want to continue deepening this type of knowledge, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every week there is new content to help you understand yourself better and live with more emotional freedom.